Imagine being the direct heir to one of the greatest fortunes ever accumulated in the history of modern civilization. You don't live in a castle with moats. You grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. Your father, a man you see reading the newspaper in his armchair every night, commands an empire called Berkshire Hathaway, which today is worth the astronomical figure of $1 trillion. You've just had a baby. Your life is changing and your kitchen is too small. Your son's high chair barely fits. You're not asking for a jet, a Ferrari, or a beachfront mansion. You go to your father, the man who earns millions of dollars while he sleeps, and ask for a simple loan of $41,000 for a basic renovation. Money that, for him, is generated in a matter of seconds, just from Coca-Cola dividends. And his response, dry and definitive, is, go to the bank like anyone else. Today, we're going to uncover the story that shocked the world and continues to divide opinions on the boundaries between financial education and family coldness. Why was Susan Buffett, the eldest daughter of the Oracle of Omaha, treated like a complete stranger by her own father at the moment she sought support for her child's well-being? Was Warren Buffett the stingiest man in history? Or was he silently applying the most valuable capital allocation lesson a human being could receive? Prepare yourself, because what happened after that no changed the Buffett family dynamics forever and reveals the dark secret of why 90% of global fortunes completely disappear in the hands of the second and third generations. Before we understand Susan's visceral reaction to being sent to the line of a commercial bank, I want to ask you a sincere question. If you had billions, would you give the money to make your child's life easier? Or would you give the lesson to strengthen their character? Your answer reveals a lot about how you handle your own growth. If you want to master the mindset that separates true empire builders from people who merely consume resources, subscribe now. Turn on notifications, because today's story isn't about figures. It's about the foundation of character that sustains real freedom. To understand the $41,000 no, we need to step back into Susan's formative years. She recounts, in an almost comical tone today, that she only discovered her father was the Warren Buffett of the headlines when she was over 20 years old, reading a report in a national magazine. At home, money was never a trophy. Warren wanted his children to grow up in what he calls an environment of absolute merit. At dinner, there was no talk of yachts. There was talk of compound interest, integrity, and why most wealthy people lose touch with reality. Warren was conducting a social experiment with his own children. Would it be possible to raise normal people inside a bubble of infinite wealth? When Susan got married and moved to Washington, D.C., she lived the reality of any young American mother. The budget was tight, and the logistics of the house with the arrival of a baby became a nightmare. She described her kitchen as a space where you could barely turn around. As any daughter would, she turned to her father. She didn't want a gift. She proposed a loan. She believed that because she was his daughter, she would have access to friendly capital. Lower interest rates, less bureaucracy, a more human touch. But for Warren Buffett, there is no friendly capital when it comes to character development. The Oracle does not operate with his heart when an individual's future is at stake. He operates with principles of incentives. When Susan made the request, Warren did not hesitate for a second. He didn't consult his financial manager. He consulted his code of ethics. He coldly asked, "Why don't you go to the local bank?" To Susan, that wasn't just a financial denial. It was an emotional gut punch. "I thought I was asking my father for help. I wasn't asking him to support me," she declared years later. The sensation of being sent to a bank line, to be evaluated by a manager who didn't know who her father was an experience of humiliation and shock. But behind this apparent cruelty, there was a mathematical logic. Warren explained his vision through the theory of undue advantage. If he lent the money, Susan would be operating under a protection that the rest of the world doesn't have. She would never know what it's like to fear a late payment. She would never know what it's like to negotiate interest rates. By sending her to the bank, he forced her into the arena of reality. He wanted her to sign the paperwork, to feel the weight of the pen when taking on a debt, and to understand that capital has a cost that must be paid with work and productivity, not with a surname. Warren Buffett is perhaps the world's greatest critic of what he calls the ovarian lottery. He believes the inheritance system is one of capitalism's greatest flaws, comparing the transfer of fortunes to choosing the 2024 Olympic team based only on the children of the 1980 athletes. For him, inherited success is a poison that paralyzes the heir's ambition and deprives society of new talent. He knew that if he facilitated the $41,000 renovation, Susan would never have the satisfaction of looking at that kitchen and saying, "I achieved this." Ease breeds fragility. Buffett wanted anti-fragile children. He wanted that if Berkshire Hathaway disappeared tomorrow, Susan would still know how to navigate the banking system, how to manage a budget, and how to survive. The No of 1970 was, in fact, an intellectual life insurance policy he was buying for her. The story gains layers of humanity when we look at Susie Sr., Warren's late wife. While Warren maintained his iron stance, Susie was the emotional bridge. Biographers say it was the mother who, discreetly, helped Susan navigate that difficult period. However, the damage, or the lesson, was already done. Susan went to the bank. She was evaluated. She got the loan based on her own credit. She paid every penny back with market interest rates. Years later, the impact of this decision blossomed in a way no one predicted. Susan did not become a bitter heiress who spends fortunes on shopping to compensate for a void. On the contrary, she became one of the most respected philanthropists in the United States. In a revealing 2017 interview, she defended her father tooth and nail. He gets a bad rap for being stingy, but he was preparing us. He didn't want us to be people who only consume what others produce. The most fascinating point of this saga is that Warren Buffett did, eventually, give billions of dollars to his children. But there is a crucial detail. He didn't give the money to their personal accounts. He gave it to the foundations they manage. On his 75th birthday, Warren called his 3 children and told them he would entrust them with the management of billion-dollar sums for social causes. Why did he deny $41,000 for a kitchen, but give billions later? Because the second time, he wasn't giving money to children. He was giving capital to proven managers. Susan proved she knew the value of $1 at a commercial bank. Howard proved he knew how to manage farms and understand world hunger. Peter proved he could create his own art. Warren waited for them to become independent adults before giving them the keys to humanity's vault. If he had given in on the kitchen renovation, he would never have had the confidence to hand over the foundations. For those watching this channel in search of financial freedom, Susan Buffett's lesson is a game changer. Lifestyle creep, or the inflation of one's lifestyle, is what kills most fortunes. If you get used to having someone solve your financial problems with a snap of a finger, you lose the ability to solve problems, period. The greatest wealth you can inherit or build is not real estate or stocks, but the cognitive ability to generate value regardless of who your parents are. Warren Buffett denied the loan because he loved his daughter too much to let her be mediocre. He treated her like a stranger at the bank so that she would never be a stranger to herself. He wanted her to know what she was capable of without the shield of a billion. Susan Buffett's kitchen renovation might have cost $41,000 and many tears of frustration at the time. But it built a mental structure worth trillions. In the end, being treated like a stranger by the richest man in the world was the greatest privilege Susan Buffett ever received. It forced her to grow, to understand the system, and to become the powerful woman she is today, leading real social changes. And you? After hearing this story, do you still think Warren Buffett was a cold father, or do you now see the genius behind his rigidity? If you were in Susan's shoes, would you have forgiven your father, or would you have cut ties? Leave your opinion in the comments. This is a debate that always generates sparks. In the next video, we will analyze the Omaha will. Buffett's exact plan for the day he is no longer here and why he decided to leave only a minimal fraction of his personal wealth to his family. What is he hiding in the final contract? Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss this technical and human analysis. Until the next lesson of value.